Hey guys. Um, Christine, I am inviting you if you are here.
Yes. Hi. All right, hang on one sec.
So I think I figured it
We
out
got it.
finally.
Okay,
Maybe.
we got it.
Hi, Megan. Hi. It's nice to see you.
Like it's way too close on my face, but that's okay.
It's fine.
Awesome. All right, we figured it out faster than last time. We get a little faster every time. Hi,
I think that's how things are.
Megan. Do you want to get started, Kara? You want to give people a few more minutes? I don't know how many people we'll have.
Yeah, I had a couple people in the last round, and then I had to kick everybody out because I had to stop.
I know. Hopefully they'll find us again. I saw a couple people in there.
We could just actually start up. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing well, or good afternoon, depending on where you're at in the world.
Yep. Kara, what coffee are you drinking, or what beverage? I know you were just eating lunch.
It's just tea right now. So it's just a black tea, English breakfast. So how about you?
Nice. I have my coffee from this morning that I'm still working on. So I actually made it to the gym this morning, so I had to take a break from drinking my coffee. Usually it's gone by now.
I don't know that gym and coffee actually works really well. So that was
No,
important.
you can't. You can't bring your coffee into the gym. It's just weird. So yeah. All right. Well, do we want to just give people like some updates on what we've been up to, and then we can jump into today's topic, which is plotting versus pantsing and everything in between?
Absolutely.
Why don't you go first? Tell us what you've been up to.
Well, I got my book two, Ashes Fall at Dawn, back from the betas like a week early. So I was really surprised and delighted. Because they all turned it back in, and I was like, hey, that must mean something good. And then,
Amazing.
thank you. The cover is almost complete, and I started writing a offshoot of the Trinity world, or the Trium Perfectum world that I'm making, and that's going to be a 30 plus odd main characters romantic-y type situation, but still the same world, different
Nice.
times and stuff.
Book?
So, how about you?
Is that a book, a novella, a short story?
It'll be a novel.
Okay.
It'll come out sometime. I just started it, so it's not.
Amazing. No, we're in the same boat. I just started a new project too. Awesome. I'm so excited that you got your beta reader feedback back. That's always really exciting.
Thank you. What
Yeah.
you working on?
So I am officially on submission with Kingdom of the Owl. So I am just, bracing, waiting, all of this stuff. It's only been, we went out last Tuesday, so it's been like a week and a half. So still early days, but excited and just trying to keep myself busy. I feel like everybody says when you're on submission, you should just start writing something new, have the next thing cooking. And it didn't feel productive to keep working, quite honestly, on the Thrillwood series while I'm on submission, knowing that book one could change a lot. So I started a completely new project. It's contemporary romance. It is first person present tense, which I've never written in before. I just hit 15,000 words this morning, so it is going to be a real book. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. It's like a breath of fresh air. So yeah, that's what's going on with me.
First person present, dual POV is like my favorite to write in.
Yeah.
I just love it so much. How long does it take usually to hear back from submissions? Do you know yet? Did your agent talk to you about it?
It can really vary. Yeah. So for anybody else who's interested in this, like sometimes it goes very fast. Sometimes it takes a long time. I feel like the couple of trad published authors that I'm friends with took between like 3 and 6 months for them to like announce their book deal. So that's not super long, but I see people on threads that have been on sub for like a year or 2 years. I did ask him to send me rejections only on Friday mornings because after querying and like your inbox is like, you have PTSD from checking your email. So I did get my first pass this morning. I won't say who it's from, but there's still 14 out in this first round. And honestly, I was bracing for more than one pass this morning, so I was happy with that. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's good. You're gonna totally get it. I'll not worry for you. How about that?
Well, I appreciate that. Oh, right. So, we wanted to also just let folks know that these videos are also now up on YouTube. And we only have one, obviously. Today's the second one, but we'll continue to put them on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, so you can watch them afterwards if you don't catch it live, and we'll link to that through Instagram.
Yeah. And they may even one day get professional instead of just raw.
Yeah, someday we'll have them edited when we have like 5 free minutes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So do you want to tell everybody what plotting is?
Yeah. Yeah, so we thought we'd just kick things off with just like level set. What is plotting? What is pantsing? I don't actually know where the term pantsing originated from, but I think we know what it means. But I'm more of a plotter. Kara, I think, is more of a pantser. And so we're going to kind of like, toggle between those POVs today. So, I mean, plotting is exactly what it sounds like. It's when you really kind of plan out your novel or your work, whatever it is, in advance before you write it, whether it's like a full outline, whether it's, a 3-act structure. We're going to talk about lots of different ways you can do it. But yeah, it means you kind of come up with a plot before you write the book.
Actually, when I was looking up definitions for the one IG post, it says that pantsing just basically came from flying by the seat of your pants. So they just started calling it that. So that's that. I do pantser. I am a pantser. Most of the time when I was ghostwriting, I had to do outlines for the clients. But even then I was just kind of like, they're going to do what they're going to do. And the clients either liked it or didn't. And
Yeah,
that's what that was.
so you can speak to both, right? And honestly, I think we both can. And what we were talking about before we started this live is how I think people like to put themselves in a bucket. They like to say, oh, I'm a plotter or I'm a pantser. But honestly, it's a spectrum. Like everything in life, it's a spectrum. Like you could do both at different times or be somewhere in the middle. When I was first starting out writing Kingdom of the Owl, I was like trying to learn everything I could. And I wound up, which if folks haven't checked this out, I highly recommend it. Brandon Sanderson teaches creative writing at, it might be Brigham Young University, I can't remember exactly. He posts his full lectures on YouTube of like this writing 101 class. Anyone can watch them. It's amazing, free information. But he talks about gardener versus architect, which I kind of like because I feel like pantsing, when you hear pantsing, it's not like giving it enough credit. Versus gardening, it's really like you are planting all these seeds as you write, and then by the time you get later in the book, you were like harvesting all of that to come up with this really satisfying ending, I think.
And pantsing actually just reminds me of being in 7th grade and everybody would pull people's pants down. So you know what I mean? Like I like that much better because that's when I first heard the term, like I had said, I hadn't heard it ever. And then I joined this mastermind and people started talking about it. So I had to be like, well, what is that? And so I started finding it. But when they said pantsing, it was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
But gardening is much better. I like that.
Exactly. And he gave examples of like, Stephen King is probably one of the most famous gardeners. I mean, if you read his memoir, he talks about the fact that he starts every book with like a 1-sentence like character in a scenario. And I think a lot of people do actually start with this. So the fact that like you could start with just that and be such like a genius at writing that by the end of it, you've got this totally satisfying story that just poured out of you without a plan. It's like actually, I think, more impressive than, being a plotter or an architect. But we all do what we need to do to make the best story we possibly can. And so that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I get a lot of questions now, and it's something that I should have expected, but I didn't because I'm doing podcasts now, and all the people that I speak to, interviews and other podcasts, they're like, how do you keep track of everything? And I'm like, just in my head. So I have to start. I had to start a World Bible because it is getting so low. But yeah, that's just where it all is right now. So.
I love that, a World Bible. I have that too. I think even if you're whether you're a plotter or a pantser, having this, like, I feel like some people call it style guide, which I know is a little bit different, but having this sort of like background document. And hey, if we all become as famous as J.K. Rowling someday, maybe that'll be like published in something people want to read too. I feel like she kind of turned all her background notes into like additional books. So, all right, shall we get into it? We have a question from R.C. Perry. I have no clue how to plot or start an outline. What are your tips for creating an outline?
So I will say that there are a ton, I'm going to jump in. Sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah, go for it. No, you go first.
Um, so there are a ton of templates online. You can literally Google it or Bing or whatever your preferred, search engine is. Say template, outline template for fiction novel or something similar. There are a billion out there. If you want, RC, I actually know you, so I can send you my template that I've, created because I, again, was ghostwriting. But really, you kind of just write. You start with an
You
idea.
start with an idea. I agree with
And
that, no matter what.
then I would go setting, plot, characters, and then you can break it into character development, like physical attributes, um, their personality, what they do for a job, what they wear. And then you can go into an introduction, like a summary of something and of the book, like you want to do it. And then you can break it down into chapters and sort of go through. Does that help?
No, I think that's good. And I mean, I think I would say kind of the same thing, but I when I read this question, I tried to think back to what I did with Kingdom of the Owl, because when I sat down to write that book, honestly, I didn't know I was going to write a book. I just heard this crazy story from a friend, and I just started writing like almost a short story about it, and it kept going. Um, and I realized that even with this new project now, I kind of started the same way. Like you said, Kara, I started with an idea. You get an idea, and for me, I kind of like write a chapter or two. Usually, when I get the idea, part of that is how the story starts. And so I usually write a chapter or two to like see if I'm connecting with it, connecting with the characters, if it has legs. If that happens and I want to keep going, then I honestly just start by opening a Word document and just kind of like brain dumping. Like, what happens at the beginning? What's going to happen at the middle? What's going to happen at the end? And I just add notes to that as I go. And then at certain points in time, I start to clean them up and put them into an outline. And honestly, like every story has a beginning and a middle and an end. And I think that's why the 3-act structure is a thing, right? You've got your 3 acts right there. So I think at a minimum, if you have never outlined before and you're intimidated by it, you can start there. And then like Kara said, as you start writing, you can say, okay, like how does this start to break down into chapters? And you can even take it 1 act at a time. Like I'll usually brain dump and then I'll kind of outline my first act and I'll write it. And as I'm writing it, I'll get ideas for act 2 and 3 and I'll start dumping those into my outline. And then I'll organize, it's like an iterative process.
Um,
Yeah.
to add, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's it.
To add, if somebody wants to write and they don't know even where to start, there are great resources like Save the Cat. There are a couple more like that. They're called Beats and Tropes. When I first started ghostwriting, people were talking about these, and I was like, sure, yeah, I totally know what those are. I had no idea. I write how I write, and then people, put little pins in what it is. So stuff like that could be the tropes. Obviously, they're pretty widely known on Bookstagram, at least from what I see. Found family, enemies to lovers, those kinds of things. Beats are a little bit different, and it does follow sort of a skeletal structure where it'll end the act 3, 3-act line. It'll break down into each one.
Yeah.
So that's if you want to write, and even if you just want to do it as a business and not really necessarily, it's not like a passion project or something like that, starting with the beats and the tropes is a really good idea too.
I totally agree. And that takes us right into our next question, which is what tools do you use to help plot your novel, which was from Lena Kazak. And I think she means things like Save the Cat, like tools and frameworks. I mean, I think we could talk about like, do you write in Google Docs versus Scrivener's, whatever. But I echo what Kara said about Save the Cat because it builds off of the 3-act structure. And it really gives you within each act the piece parts that you need. Something that really fascinated me is I actually read Save the Cat after I wrote Kingdom of the Owl. And of course, I'm reading this book and I'm like, this is so brilliant. Hi. Hi, Nordic Mom Reads. And I'm like, this book is so brilliant. Oh my God, did I do it wrong? Did I write my book wrong? And so I actually started going back through Kingdom of the Owl and comparing it because Save the Cat will literally say by 20%, you need to be like having your inciting incident or whatever it is. And I actually, it was uncanny that my book sort of did follow that, but there's a reason, I think, which is because Save the Cat is based on like hundreds or maybe even more of classic, really powerful stories that all seem to follow this same outline, structure, beats because it works. It's kind of like the hero's journey, which is another good one. So if you read a lot, right, they say the best practice for writing is reading. I think you start to internalize some of this structure, but it's a great way to start or gut check as you go. Make sure you're not missing any sort of like key beats or turning points. So yes, love Save the Cat. I could go on about it forever, but I think we said enough.
Well, and it is pretty interesting how it does happen organically. I used to teach a creative writing class where I taught the hero's journey. And, when I started, I was just kind of like, but it really is, it does fall right into place. And there's something, I can't remember what kind of system it is. If you wanted to go a little bit deeper into like character development, I know a lot of people in the television industry use this very specific, and I'll like try and figure it out because I think it's a helpful resource. Again, I would just make my characters and they would fall into these categories. So there are characters and character traits, and then you could match up, like there's a 2 and a 3, and then you would match it. You'd never put a 2 and a 3 together because that would be disastrous.
Are you talking about Enneagrams?
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
I love that you brought this. I love that you brought this up. And I guess it is part of plotting because I think when we think about plotting or outlining, we think about like chapters, right? Like what's happening in each chapter. But I think a lot of times a better place to start is actually with your character or characters. And that's actually how Save the Cat starts, right? Which is what I said I could go on forever. I guess I will now. That it starts with figuring out your character and what their surface level want is, what their deeper need is, and then I believe the third piece is like what's standing in their way, right? And if you can figure out those 3 things, it's going to give your story a much more rock solid core. But Enneagrams is personality types, and I learned about this through Bookstagram. And actually, with my my new project, there's like a little bit of a love triangle situation, and so I needed to kind of figure out, okay, we've got these 2 male personalities and 1 female. What kind of personality could she be that she'd be attracted to these 2 very different guys? And so I started just deep diving into Enneagrams and picking the personality. And it's nice because again, it gives you something to refer back to. It helps you make your characters consistent. Just say, okay, they're this type of personality, and there's wiggle room there. But I love that.
Yeah, and that was another thing that like one of my ghostwriting clients did come from the filming industry, and I know a couple of people there, film industry, and she and my other friend who's a scriptwriter would go through my books, and they'd be like, well, this character is this, and this character is this, and look at how they're doing it, and I was like, again, because I'm a pantser, I was like, that just happened. I didn't do it on purpose. But a lot of people use that. Like it's a good tool.
And
so
it can give you ideas, right? You're reading this profile of a 2 personality, and you're like, oh, I could add a scene with this or a scene with that because of something in this profile that sparked an idea. So it's all just like stuff for you to react to, and like the more you read, the more ideas you get. The same with these tools, right? You don't have to follow them blindly or exactly, but they can just help you.
And it gives you a place to start. So even if you get a place to start, then it'll be like, okay, at least I have, because I know that in any other realm of my world, I always need a place to start. The writing stuff kind of happened organically for me, and like I said, like I kind of just got the idea and I ran with it, which the idea is a place to start too, so technically it's still there. But I didn't do a lot of research when I first started writing. I really dove into research and stuff like that when I was ghostwriting, because the producers, that's what they called themselves, the producers weren't the creatives. They were sort of like, this is what I need. So I had to explain it to them in their terms.
Love that. I love that. That actually leads me to, you said you'd like the research part. I think we should jump to this really cool question we got from a sci-fi writer in our writing group who asked, can you pants gnarly sci-fi? And I think she asked this question like a little bit ironically, like, of course you can't. You have to outline. It's science fiction. Like you can't just pants that. I don't write science fiction. I write fantasy, but I would play devil's advocate on this one actually, because I think of what Kara said and what we keep saying is that you need to start with an idea. I would imagine if you're a science fiction writer, a lot of the times the idea you're starting with is like the really cool science fiction thing, like the science, because otherwise you would just go write fantasy or something else. So I kind of feel like if you have that piece, that's probably the most complicated part of your book, figured out, and you're like, so and so, my main character is in this situation where this crazy scientific scenario exists. The rest, the character development, how they interact, you can probably pants to an extent. I feel like you probably have to like research and plan a little bit around the science part to start. But once you have that figured out, I do think you can kind of garden that story a bit.
Well, and sorry.
No, I'm just saying, what do you think?
So I grew up on sci-fi, and I grew up with Ellen Ripley, and I grew up with Star Trek, and I'm a huge Trekkie, and X-Men. I love it. And my fantasy leans slightly into sci-fi. The more you get into the there's like a medical company, so there's images. There's kind of like it'll kind of have a sci-fi flair, but I don't see why anybody couldn't pants, because even with my fantasy, the dark fantasy, Cinders, whatever, the world that I built, it started off, I had no idea that 3 was going to be a significant number. I didn't know that, the oldest kid was going to get 2 powers. I didn't know like anything. And the more you dig into something, the more formatted it becomes. So
I totally agree. Yes, it can evolve, and you can go back and refine it, right? Like there's outlining, and then there's like the endless iterations of editing that also happen. So great question. The next question we have is from Teresa. It's a 3-part question. Do you start writing before you plot or after? Which I think we kind of answered already, but we can talk more about that. And then, because we're both writing series, do you plot all the books in a series at a time, or as you write each book, and do you know how the series is going to end, Kara?
Yes, I do. I know how my book is going to end. I have these very specific moments in my story that I know are going to happen. It's what happens in between them that I let kind of happen organically. I started this project 15 years ago, so it's had a lot of time to like develop and brew and like do all of that stuff. So I have a little bit more, I'm grounded into that world. But so many other elements are pantsed, and they gardened. They're gardened, and I don't know what's happening in between them. Like there has to be, in book 1, there had to be a very specific. There has to be very specific things to happen, like the cliffhanger and a couple other things. But the road in between was all swirly and curvy. I had no idea what was happening. I was like, sure, let me just write it.
What's interesting is I was thinking about my answers to some of these questions, and this one in particular. I was like, maybe I'm more of a gardener pantser than I thought, because I kind of do the same thing. Like in my outline for Kingdom of the Owl, it did wind up being a chapter by chapter outline. With this new project, it's much more loose. But even with that first book, there are chapters in that book that were never part of the outline, and they're some of my favorite chapters. And when we first talked to Becca Freewrites, like our first live together, I like kind of related it to like, you might be going on a road trip and you're so excited for this trip, this family vacation, but then you like see something on the side of the road, like a national park or whatever, and you're like, oh, maybe I'll stop and check it out. And that spontaneity can become your favorite part of the trip. And I think it's the same with writing. And even if you make an outline, leaving that room to surprise yourself, I very deeply believe that the emotions we feel about our own writing as we're writing it are directly sort of translated to the reader. So if you feel bored while writing it, which can happen if you over outline, I think the reader is going to feel bored. And if you feel excited and like, oh my God, where did this come from? I love this so much. This is a twist. I think the reader is going to feel that too. So that was a tangent. Just to answer the question, no, I do not plot all the books in the series at once. I do have a rough idea of how the series is going to end. I'll be completely honest though, I go back and forth between like sort of a more traditional fantasy kind of ending and something totally outrageous that people will maybe be very torn on. So I've left it open, but I was in a really interesting situation getting ready to go on submission because I had to put together pitches for all four books. And book two is written and book three is like almost done. But book four, I haven't really done anything with other than ideas in my head. And so I had to sort of like lay out how the stories are all going to interconnect. And that was a really great exercise, but I did not do that from the beginning. And I don't know that I would have done that unless I was pushed to.
Well, and even to sort of not back on, but sort of to pile on to that, Teresa asked about a backlist, and my backlist was accidental. Like I knew that you needed, or I knew that it's good to have a backlist because readers love being a part of like all of these worlds.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily plan on having my side character novellas until the first time I wrote it was like July. So like I didn't even know like the two male characters were going to have their own sort of, love story journey situation. And then so now I have like 5 different side characters, and then I have the romantasy that actually spawned from that, where there'll be 30-something year-old main characters. So it's really interesting how things can develop if you let them flow.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when you're writing a series, it's good to have some plan at least in your head for each book, because I think we've all like read those series. One of which is humongous right now, and I won't name it by name. Where you're reading a book and you're like, get there faster. Like, did you really need this to be a whole book? Could we like, do we need a 5-book series here? And even when I got my agent, he was like, does it need to be 4 books? Can it be a trilogy? And I'm like, maybe it can be a trilogy. The reason for me, and again, as a new writer, I'm tapping into Celtic lore. There are 4 treasures, 4 kingdoms, all the mythology. So for me, I knew from the beginning each book was going to be a different kingdom. Sort of like how in Harry Potter, each book is a different year at Hogwarts. So it's just like this, it gave it a structure in and of itself. So in that way, there was always a plan. But think about that, right? Like things can develop, but also you don't want to like, I guess, drag your readers on forever. Make sure each book kind of has a point, is what I would say.
I think that's really, really good. We already kind of talked about it. The next question is, how does your writing a pitch or a blurb first impact your outlining process? You had mentioned the Save the Cat beat sheet, but did you have anything else to add to that question?
I would just say, so, I kind of retroactively did this for Kingdom. And I think most people, when they're writing their first book, they write the book. And then when they're done, they're like, I got to put a query letter together or a blurb for the back of the book. So it's retro. But for my new project, I wrote the pitch first because I'm like, oh, I got an agent now. Like, what if this book doesn't sell? And these publishers are like, what else you got? So I have like a working document now with some ideas. And I actually loved it. I loved writing the pitch first because I feel like it anchors the story. I just did a video on this, but it really helped me like define it's a dual POV. It helped me define each of the characters, and it really helped me home in on like what the main conflict and what the main like growth journey is going to be. And I can keep coming back to that. And it's almost like, are you delivering on that promise as you're writing? So I would say it's not necessarily that you like take your pitch and you flesh it out into an outline. I don't think it really works that way, but I think it kind of keeps you honest. Does your plan match match your promise?
Yeah, I think that sounds really good. I hate writing summaries and blurbs.
I just posted a formula, Kara, so your life's about to get a lot easier. Just use my magic formula.
Thank you. Sarah asked if we leave, for the Magic Quill, she asked if we leave room for flexibility so you can expand your story. I do think we touched on it, but for a simple answer, yes, I do.
Yeah, same, absolutely, yes. We're at time actually, but for the folks that are watching, does anybody have any questions they thought of as we've been talking that they'd like us to answer before? We have one more question, I think, from Vanessa that we can answer before we wrap up. All right, well, we wait to see if any questions chime in. So this might be more for me, and then we can answer Lee's as well. If you think of yourself as a true plotter, how much does the finished project resemble the original plan? It's a really great question. I would say it is the same story, right? Like it's the same beginning, middle, and end. But how it comes to life is maybe different, right? Like there are some scenes in there or some characters take like a hard left that I hadn't intended. So like the outline might be like 50% different by the end. That some of that also comes with editing, which is Lee's question. But I would say like if I had to write a pitch at the beginning and a pitch at the end, the pitches would probably be pretty much the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I was doing my book when Cinders Burn at Midnight, everything was already in my head. And I had already, to write this first draft, I started in 2023 and it went into 2024. I was working with a DE and developmental editor, and she was coming back and she was like challenging me on stuff because she was doing more of a manuscript review, not like a full DE development. And I remember this one moment, and I'm like, in my head, I am talking to the characters writing it, and I'm like, this isn't supposed to be happening. What are you doing? This is wrong. And they're like, no, I'm still going to do this anyway. And it did make the story 100% better. But at first, I had no idea where it was going. And I was just kind of like, I'll get it out, and then I'll erase it. And I never did because it was good.
Yeah, I think that's so true because the characters should feel real, right? And sometimes they just don't do what you want them to do. I'll never forget a Sarah J. Maas interview where she's like, yeah, sometimes like characters are like dolls, and like sometimes like the dolls like just won't play together. Like it's just like just doesn't work. Especially with like romance sometimes, right? Like you think you're gonna pair these two characters up and all of a sudden it's like, why does this feel cringy? It's just not working. So that's a whole other episode, romance. But the last question we have here is, do you write the bones of the entire story and then go back and revise, or are you meticulous about every chapter before moving on? I think we can end on this one. Kara, what do you think?
I think I'm not. I think that if, in my experience, the way my brain works, if I did that, I would never write anything. I would get like 3 paragraphs out and I would freeze. Because I do lean more flexible with sort of just everyday life. I think that when I was working for ghostwriting clients, they really needed to see everything how it was, but they also didn't understand that a first draft was a first draft and the second draft would be better and you put in more world and everything like that. So that's always a complicated thing to describe to somebody, but also some people's brains are like that, and that's the way that some writers write.
Yeah, I find it fascinating because I have a friend whose book is coming out in a month, and she let me beta read her second book, and she's like, I haven't edited it at all. And I'm like, this looks like almost ready to publish. Like, yeah, some people are just amazing. It just flows right out of them, like ready to go. I'm not like that. I'm like you, Kara, where I just get it down. I tell myself it doesn't have to be perfect. I like put in my binaural beats and just try to get in the zone and write. And then I go back and edit and edit and edit. Anyone who follows me on Instagram knows how much editing I do. When I wrote Kingdom of the Owl, I was on a sabbatical. So I would actually like start every writing day by going back to what I wrote the day before and kind of like rereading it, getting back in the zone, loosely editing it, and then flowing into the day's new content. I don't have time for that now. So yeah. We'll see. I might kind of edit each like act before I move on to the next act with this new project. But I love, you probably everyone knows who follows me. I love to edit on the Kindle Scribe because reading for some reason my book on a Kindle, and I was doing this even before I had the Scribe just with the regular Kindle app. It just to me makes it feel like I'm reading a real book. And then things that stick out is like not enough, too much, whatever. It's like very, very obvious. My brain just works in a different way. So I highly recommend finding a way that you can kind of like read your book objectively and then going back through it.
Sam, your first draft wasn't garbage. It was a first draft. Note that off.
We're all in the same boat.
We are.
Shitty first drafts exist for a reason, and they're not as shitty as we think, but there's a reason why that's a term.
And they have to come out. Yeah, it has to come out. And if it doesn't come out, then you can't ever do a new draft or anything like that. So
you can't edit a blank page, as they say, as we all know.
Yeah. No, thank you guys for joining, and thank you, dumpster fire. It was not a dumpster fire.
I love it. Oh my gosh. All right. So to close, I think we just want to, let everyone know, first of all, thank you so much for being here. We hope you continue to join these and find them helpful. If you're coming across this after the fact and you don't follow us both Instagram or both on TikTok. I do not have a book out yet for you to buy or for you to add to your Goodreads, but hopefully soon. So, yeah, just follow me to support me, and you can check out my website, sign up for my newsletter, which will be coming at some point. And yeah, really appreciate you being here, Kara.
Yes, Sam, send me your first draft, and then I'll tell you if it's a dumpster fire or not. So, but yes, thank you so much for being here, everybody who supported us, and anybody who could pop in for a couple of seconds. We really appreciate it. Again, I'm on Instagram. I am on TikTok now, so we'll see how that goes. My first book, Cinders Burn at Midnight, is at Amazon, and it is on Kindle Unlimited, but it's everywhere else. It's a different version, but so whichever version you want, you can get. It's everywhere wide. And then I have a novella out, and it's exclusive for free for newsletter subscribers, ARC members, and street team. And my street teams. So if you want that, hit me up on DM. I will totally send that to you, and I would love to have you part of my team.
Oh, and actually, speaking of that, I did make a note here because some people have sent me really, really amazingly nice, just random DMs saying, hey, I don't know if you have an ARC list, but if you have one, can you add me to it? And while I do not have an official ARC list yet, I do have a Google spreadsheet where I'm putting people's names. So if you are interested in being on a list for ARCs when the time comes, just DM me and I'll add you to the list. And even if it's like a year from now, I will follow up with you about that.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. You could do a spreadsheet too.
That's what I have. Yeah, Google spreadsheet. Yep, exactly.
I have Google Forms, and Google Forms puts everything in a spreadsheet for me, and I'm like, this is awesome. So.
Oh, gotta love Google stuff. Google Suite. All right. Thank you guys so much. Hope everyone has an amazing, amazing weekend. And yeah, keep writing.
And send us questions if you have any. DMs are open all the time.
Bye.
Bye. People are still here. I can't. There we go.